how the Romans affected us and how we still do the same thing. Anyway, they open these cards. You've got letters there from one from the garrison's commander's wife to another garrison's commander's wife, basically saying, bored, come and visit me. There's a letter there from a centurion out on deployment somewhere. We've run out of beer, send beer. That's all the thing. These letters. Now, of course, the first thing that happens when you find something that's important is the British Museum swoops, and they took them all away. There's very few. We have a few actual examples of these letters, so you can see, but it doesn't matter because we've got the facsimiles of what was written, which is the important thing. You don't want to see all these great documents. So when you get in the museum, please do take some time on that, because they are unique in the Roman world, really, and there's a few other things that come onto it are unique as well, because no one's found this amount of documented history. This is what they call, if anyone does been to university, that primary evidence. It's not secondary, it's not what someone else said, it's what was said at the time. This is fascinating stuff. I find the whole thing fascinating. So that's the most important site, the UNESCO status that gives us because of that, which is marvellous. So we'll get on with the village. Roman military bathhouse, built along at the same time as the second one. There was a previous one with the first stone fort, which is over the other side of the fort itself. They stripped a lot of that to make this one. They recycled quite a lot. Romans invented recycling. We know it was used by the civilian community because we found children's shoes in here. That soldiers had very small feet. So obviously, this being a bit more lax, it is a military garrison. The people in the village associated, they would have been allowed in there. Whether they had mixed or separate bathings, and that obviously we don't know. But we know that everyone used this bathhouse. Here on your left, you have the latrine block. Open air, that helps with the smells, and pretty basic as well. You've got accommodation for 8, 4 facing 4, no privacy. You're sitting on a big wooden bench. We know it was a wooden bench because when you get in the museum, it's part of the toilet seats. 2,000-year-old toilet seats. Wooden, very clever. So you just basically face each other. No Andrex in those days. Anyone has a guess what they used instead of Andrex? Sponges, yes. You're on the right line, but there's a dearth of sponge in the Northumbria because there's more moss, spag moss to be precise. Spag moss that makes peat over the thousands and thousands of years. What the Romans didn't appreciate is that actually spag moss has antiseptic properties in it. When I lived on the Hebrides, I used to do the Duke of Edinburgh's award, the youngsters. And I used to say to them, you know, if you need to clean your hands up, use spag moss, because it's not just getting the dirt off, it's actually got chemical evidence. And when I got youngsters, I always say, because you all wash your hands before you eat, don't you? So they use that. So you would set off to the block, carrying your stick with your moss on. Everyone knows where you're going. And I also think it's where the expression getting the wrong end of the stick comes from. Running water, as we've described, the Romans have worked out levels. For hundreds of years they've worked out, the Greeks have worked out levels as well, how to move water. So all would have ran around here, through the bathhouse, through the village. You'll see there's open sewers there, into a ditch that was around. This is the ditch they're exploring now, because that's where most of our finds come from. This is from the early 3rd century under the Emperor Severus, and we're going to come on to him in a minute. And that would have been much lower than this, about 20 foot lower, and run over the hill and run away. Not too bad, because it's Northumbria. I wouldn't want to have the same facilities in Naples in August. Not so good. Entry into the bathhouse is there on your left. Basically, the modesty is a thing of the 21st century. Romans didn't have this hang-up. Basically, you stripped off. You brought with you some olive oil. There was no soap in those days, and you covered yourself in olive oil. Or you probably would have got your mate or your partner or whoever's with you doing it back. Just like on the beach, someone put some stuff on your feet. You then go into by the way, this is the next thing the Romans invented. They've invented the gym, because this isn't just a bathhouse, this is a social place. And just like modern gyms now, some people go in there to beat themselves up on treadmills, other people go in there because the coffee's better. So, you know, it's a recreational space. The Romans, we know, loved to horseplay. They like wrestling and boxing and things like that. Dice and all sorts of things are found here, again in the museum. So you went into the temperate room, heated to about 25 degrees, and you began to sweat or glow or perspire, whichever you used, and your pores would open and the filth would start. And then you then drew out this little, like a 12-inch ruler, and you proceeded to scrape. See how the cleanliness and hygiene's not perhaps as much as we imagine. This is not Bath, where they've got all these, or like the movies, you know, where you've got some maiden pouring water over you. This is a toilet block. This is a bathhouse for a garrison. So you scrape all this stuff off, and you then go into the really hot room, and that's heated up to about 40 degrees. That's Turkish bath sort of level. Heated up by slaves down in that bunker there, forcing hot air into a hypercore system, which you can see there. That's a hypercore system. All the air would have gone, hot air would have gone underneath, and it was heated to. We know it was heated to a high degree because the place was full of clocks. The Romans invented flip-flops. Many of them in the museum. When you get down to the museum, there's those buildings you can see in the far distance. They're just full of shoes. These ditches and things. One of the biggest commodity we found here is shoes, and some of the best pieces are in the museum. They're wonderful, wonderful artifacts. So it's heated up there. You can see that the hypercourse we would have had over the hypercourse would have been flagstones or concrete. Romans invented concrete by using lime, and there's an example of that there. You then came out of that very hot room, and then you went in the plunge pool, the circular thing there, and sealed your pores again. Now, the best analogy of what this process is doing is to give you a childhood memory. My mother had a child, my brother, 8 years after my sister was born. Not an unexpected pregnancy. She had bed rest in hospital, so I went to my paternal grandparents and my sister to the maternal for 6 months. And they lived in a thatched cottage near Stonehenge, so I've got a history of these ruins. No pump. My grandfather would stick my head under every morning in the middle of winter, hence the reason I'm still alive today, I think. No electricity. Thatched cottage is a yuppie's house nowadays, but it was a gamekeeper. But on a Saturday night, because in those days you only had a bath once a week, Saturday night was bath night. Remember all this really old people like me? Before you went to church the next day in your Sunday best. The tin bath would be put in front of the fire, filled with hot water, and that was to be my bath. The disadvantage being I had to wait till my granddad had finished. And what you've got is the same here and now. Yes, you've got the water being changed, but it won't have been kept up to the same level of that. So you're bathing in other people's filth, basically. And we know that because I'll go back to the letters. One of the letters from the Vindolanda, from the 2nd century there, is from the garrison commander to his commander saying, I've got problems at Vindolanda. Half the garrison's gone down with temporary blindness. They'd all got conjunctivitis. And the only place they could have collectively got it would have been India. So our standards of hygiene don't quite match that. But if you look at an ancient Britain looking at this going on, the average ancient Briton would have taken his kit off in July, washed himself, put it all back on, and that would have been the next 365 days till he did it again. So what the Romans were up to would have been mystery to them. This was a solid building. There's a record that the roof was still on this in the 17th century. Passing vicar put in his diary that the roof was still on this. Bear in mind, this would all still be here if it wasn't for the looting. You're not going to build houses and farmsteads and walls from quarries when all this stuff's sitting around. So over the years, Hadrian's walls disappeared. The only reason you've got this lovely bit at the back there on the windsill is because it's too damn difficult to go up there and bring it down. But they've had a lot of it. This is preserved because there's a lot of wind here. Then what you've got is a layer of soil. Bear in mind that that fort was under soil. That's all been dug out. So that was saved because before the looters started, it was already got himself hidden. So we've got some of it. Got the footprint. That's the important thing. So that's the bathhouse, and we're going to go through the village itself now. Go this way. Just mind how you go. Excuse me. When you get to the museum, there's an aerial from a drone. They've taken an aerial picture of it. Do have a look at it. It's in the new wood section. It gives you an overview of the thing, and you realise just how big this is. But it is quite. What we've got now is the vicus, and as I explained earlier, this village was built in the early 3rd century, about 212, at the same time as the 3rd stone fort. But the village is on the site of the 2nd stone fort, because that's on the site of the first stone fort, and it's all on the site of the sixth fort, wooden fort, which goes that way. That's all keeping up with this. I mentioned that Septimus Service came here. Now, he came in 2008. They abandoned this in 190, when I told you about the burning of the tablets. But 2008, Septimus Service, the Emperor, came to Britain to sort the North British out once and for all. So he built a series of, opened up the forts again. The first stone fort was not usable, so they built a second one. It was only here till 215, because it's three-sided with an open thing. When we get in the fort, there's a reason why I'm interested in it being open on that side. Septimus Service came here. Population of Britain in 208 was about 3.5 million. Population of Britain now is 67 million. The British Army today is about 80,000 soldiers strong. In 208, Septimus Service assembled an army of 50,000 soldiers. So there's an incredible, it's an amazing number of troops. Amazing number of troops. They mainly came across from the east and went up the east coast into Scotland. And in 210, he took his army up in there and he subdued the Picts and the Caledonians, the North British that were there, and all went well. He came back, he went to garrison, he went to York, where one of the legions was based, but in 2011 the Picts and the Caledonians kicked off again. So he brought his 50,000 men back into Scotland, and he created the next thing the Romans gave us: genocide. They put everyone to the sword, anything and everyone they met, from here to the Central Belt, as they call it, the Antonine War. So between here, Glasgow and Edinburgh, that line, people